Determining where is the best place to market your business is one of the things that sometimes can be confusing and feel overwhelming. There's so many options in today's world with digital media, with offline media, with many different things. But we're going to talk about a surefire way today that you can find out exactly where you should market your business and how to do that successfully. So stay tuned and I'll share all that with you. Earlier this week, I believe it was on Monday, we talked about a really, really important step that I would encourage you to make sure you do consistently, because it will actually help you determine where you should be marketing as it relates to your business. So if you're surveying your audience consistently, then it's a lot easier to uncover where they hang out, what they think about, and where you should advertise to them. So when doing a survey, you want to ask them about their challenges, what steps they've taken to try to solve that problem that they're trying to solve. You have a lot of information you can gather just from the written survey, but then when you're doing follow-up interviews to the people that did the survey and talking to them and getting their information and just learning more about their life, you can ask this both in the survey, but it's also really helpful to ask it live in your video call or your one-to-one call with that person. Ask them, where do you get your news and information? What type of social media do you hang out on? Where do you spend time there? Where do you connect with, family members? Where do you connect with other peers in your industry? And making note of all that will give you a good idea of where they're gathering their information from. So they may be on LinkedIn more. They may, just search things on Google or watch YouTube. They might be on Facebook. They might be on Pinterest. Like, there's a lot of online platforms that are more easy for us to remember these days typically. But you also want to find out and say, do you read any magazines? Is there anything that you get mailed to you that you use and enjoy? Because is there any radio stations, or is there any specific television shows that you like watching? Those other media channels, although they're not as talked about as much, can be powerful and even more powerful sometimes than digital marketing, depending on the industry or the niche that you're focusing on. And so using a survey as a baseline to start to figure out where people gather their information and what they learn there is a great place to start. But then also, when you're having that live conversation, make sure you dig into where do you hang out the most? Where can where do you get your information from? News? How do you hang out with other folks in the industry? Is it in-person events? Because that's another channel, is doing, promotion and sponsorships of in-person events. Digging into what your audience is talking about as far as where they get information, where they hang out online and offline, is a huge part of figuring out what the best place is to advertise. The second thing to keep in mind as you're choosing, channels to advertise on, and where to market, is that Facebook and Google have massive, massive market share. So I always tell people with, 1 billion plus active users on Facebook's platforms, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, that if, essentially 1 in 8 people is on that platform, then some of your prospects are going to be there. So whether or not it ends up being your primary channel or your long-term channel is a different thing to think through. But early on, it's a great place to test your messaging and figure out what people are responding to. And it's rare, with any business, that either Google or Facebook is not going to produce results for you if you've done the foundational work of surveying your audience, figure out what problems they have, and making sure you're using their language and delivering the solution they want. It's easy for us as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as somebody just even leading a marketing project, to have all the knowledge we have around our company and our product and our solution. And it's easy just to vomit out too much information or get too technical too fast and miss the simple things that people are talking about that they want to solve. I have been guilty of way too many times overcomplicating what I'm going to deliver to somebody, making it over complex, making it hard to get into, or giving them too much information at once. And in reality, the way that we learn as humans is we get a little bit of information, we solve one problem, we learn a little bit more, we solve another problem. We typically are taking a little bit of a slower speed journey than going from no knowledge to having 10, 20, 30 years of knowledge like you would if you're in the industry or in that business. And so that's the key thing to remember is, if we can spoon feed our audience the things they need and help them win early on, that's what builds trust and will help them connect with us more and ask for more support and services. The last thing to really think through as you start to ask yourself, where is the best place to market my business, is make sure you're testing everything and you're testing different channels. And then ultimately you want to have multiple channels, which we'll get to here in a minute. But one of the things that we do in almost every single campaign we run now is do what's called message testing. So we'll come up with, hundreds of different headlines that speak to the problem that we're going to solve for the prospect when they click through. And then we put all those out there. We typically do that on Facebook. We put them all on Facebook. And then we'll see, here's the ad that got viewed the most. Here's the one that got clicked the most. And we can very quickly see with the real data what people are most interested in. And then that guides the rest of the ads we create, the landing pages, the offers. We just ask the audience, the market, what do you want? And we do what they want. Instead of just assuming that we know better or assuming that what worked last time is going to work again. It's much better to be consistent in doing that message testing and then seeing what people click through on. Once you've determined that, again, Facebook's a great place to do that because you can just run a very simple image with a headline that's, you want to see if people click. But once you have that in place and they're clicking through the most on this language and this offer, then you can build that offer out and run it on Facebook or Google. And then ultimately, you want to make sure that you can get 2 to 3 high-performing marketing channels for yourself, whether you're running radio that's driving somebody to a website, you're doing direct mail, SMS, cold calling, cold outreach, paid traffic, whether it's Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, YouTube, any of those channels. You want to make sure that you're not dependent on a single channel because all technology changes, the market changes in each space that they hang out. And if you're dependent on one channel and something happens with your ad account or the market shifts what they're interested in, then you go from having lead flow to having no lead flow. So that's why it's important to do message testing to figure out what people generally want. But then once you have a performing campaign, make sure that you're turning on additional channels so that you have stability and you're not just dependent on one thing. So marketing your business, what the best place is also always going to be up to your audience. They're going to tell you where you should market. And then on top of that, if you do testing, you'll see which channels give you the best return, which people are searching and most interested. Sometimes I think about as one channel we've used with podcast advertising. If you advertise on a podcast, you're typically getting a more well-read, more affluent audience member than if you do on Facebook. And so even if Facebook is working, if you try something like podcast advertising, you might have a slower lead flow. But if you're getting a higher quality prospect that comes in and wants to work with you, and get, and solve their problem, it may take a little bit longer to get their attention, or it may be a little bit more expensive for that lead. But if they convert faster, then that could be a better channel. So those are the things to think about is what is the lead flow, the number of leads I can get off a channel, but then what's the quality of leads that I can get, because are these leads converting faster than this other channel? Those are things to think about as well. So which channel is very much dependent on what your audience says and where they want to be marketed to and where they're hanging out. And then in addition, with your testing and figuring out what works the best, you can add that data on top. If you need any help with your campaigns, you need any help with marketing, if you've never even surveyed your audience, I'd be glad to help you with that. You can reach out at businessmarketingengine.com, and I look forward to hearing from you, and we'll see you on tomorrow's show.